All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Sun Pirates TCG. This is apparently going to be one of our first, if not the first video on our channel. The first episode to our podcast called It Connects. So, just to introduce ourselves a bit, my name is Colin. I've been playing competitive card games for many years, One Piece TCG since basically OP2 came out. And for many years before that, I've played Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, Pokemon, basically all the card games, quite frankly. And yeah. And how about... Yep.
Alright, I'm Mohammed Fatah. Similar to Colin, I've been playing card games for many, many years now. Been through pretty much all the major ones. I've been playing the One Piece card game since Super pre-release. And yeah.
Okay, great. And Trevor?
Excellent.
Yeah, my name's Trevor Nimkovic. I've been playing only One Piece. I haven't not played any other card games professionally. Started in the structure deck format and then to now. Nothing else to really say.
I'm Arvind. I've been playing card games since set 5 at Digimon, and then I switched over to One Piece during its first set. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And all of us have like collectively had our own tops, quote unquote, within the One Piece TCG. You know, a lot of us have had high regional finishes. I mean, all of us came into U.S. Nationals with a 2-round bye, which is nothing to scoff at. And everyone out of that 2,000 player event has placed, you know, anywhere above like the top 200 players, which I think may not sound like extremely impressive within a singular event, but when you consider that as being the first North American championships for the game, I think is a pretty strong feat regardless. So yeah, so this is, as I said before, this is the It Connects podcast, where It Connects comes from a little running joke that we've had, right guys, with perhaps people donning up their leader or their character way too high, attacking for 9k when the opponent only has one card in hand, and we'd be like, hey man, it 5 connects, bro.
It connects.
Yeah, it connects. It's just the running meme we have, I think, especially during the Whitebeard days. But yeah, so today's topic for our first episode, we are doing the top 8 tips that we've collectively put together for all you folks out there to improve in the competitive One Piece TCG. Now, this is not necessarily a comprehensive list of every single tip out there, because I would imagine there's like hundreds and hundreds of tips that anyone could follow to improve, and nor would you follow one particular tip that you would suddenly start winning tournaments per se. But I think, comprehensively speaking, if you add all these tips together, you can raise your win percentages here and there, and then over time, you know, with enough practice, you can find, you know, increasing success in your One Piece competitive career. So
Definitely.
yeah. So with that being said, Mohammed, if you would like to take the floor with our first tip.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think tip number 1 is definitely you need to take a breath before committing to a play. This is something that I personally needed to do myself more often, as Trevor can elaborate on if he'd like. But there's always situations that you'll be put in where if you just thought for like 5 more seconds or 10 more seconds, you'll realize this was 100% the better play, or this was like the better card to guard with, or variations on that, where if you like, and this isn't to say like slow play your opponent or like take minutes on minutes, but just like take a second to like think it through before you finally like commit to how many Dawn you're putting on something or what choice you have to make, because ultimately the small choices matter in the long run, and they can affect whether you win or lose a game or a match even.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, like, think before you act, right? I think that's the general tip that we would implement across like any, not just One Piece TCG, but just any card game, right? Think about your game plan, even during your opponent's turn, while they are planning out their turn and they're trying to make their plays. You know, start planning out your own turn as they're playing their previous turn, right?
It's like similar to a chess clock, right? If you know what move you're going to make before your opponent takes their action, then you have the entirety of their clock as well as all of your clock to move, right? So if you are thinking ahead and you're like thinking about what to do during your opponent's turn, you have double the amount of time to make your decision and like think on what's the correct play or not.
Yeah, but I would say it's also important to take the time on your own turn to reevaluate and make sure that the play you thought about on your opponent's turn was the correct play. I've seen games lost based on, I guess, pre-moving too early on your opponent. I think Trevor can speak to it a little bit.
Right, exactly. And
Yep.
like that's ultimately where the tip comes from is, right? Like real example, we were in the South Carolina South Carolina 3v3 event.
No, there's two Californias.
Two California. Yeah. The South Carolina 3v3, me, Trevor, and Colin Wong were on a team, and I was playing a Zoro mirror match, and for whatever reason in my head, my opponent kills my Marco, and I have a Jambe, my 5-cost Marco that says discard a spell to bring him back, and I have a Jambe in my hand, I have a jet pistol in my hand, and for whatever reason, after playing against 2 control matches, because this is round 3 or 4, I'm like, I have to keep this Jambe in my hand, this is how I win this matchup, and I discard my pistol, and literally 5 seconds later, I'm like, why is this Jambe still in my hand? This is an aggro deck. He never is going to play a blocker. And ultimately, it lost me the match. I needed the pistol later on to clear his body that would have lethaled me, and then ultimately just win the game in the following turn.
Trevor looks so sad.
That's just PTSD. it's so. I was sitting in the middle as a Whitebeard player, and I'm just like, I turn to my right, and Mohammed's like, I got a Jambe. I'm like, okay, what the fuck do you need that for?
I'm like, Trevor, I messed up. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I have this in my hand still. He's like, why do you have that? I'm like, it's okay. He played a block. He did play a chopper blocker. For some reason, the Zoro list was on a chopper, but didn't make it better.
What killed us there, Mohammed?
It wasn't the chopper.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But basically,
I'll make it clear.
just think before you act. Life, it's a good life lesson as well.
Yeah, I love that example. That's such a good example, and it brings a great story home, right? For us to rag on Muhammad.
Look, I don't love it, but I'm never gonna forget it, right?
I hope you don't.
Thanks,
Trevor
buddy.
has a similar pistol story. I'll hold over him.
Yeah. No. I also have a pistol story where I was sitting in. It was round 9 at a season or set 2 Treasure Cup, and unfortunately, if I just would have reevaluated the board state, the Whitebeard player had 3 cards. I was on Zoro. All I needed to do was pistol his Luffy, put him on having another rush character, and I decided to go face. And it turns out he had triple Rad Beam, and that was the loss. It was a good time. I should have just pistoled the Luffy. Yep. Turns out pistol's a good card.
Awesome.
It was.
All right. Yeah. So number 1, think before you act. Right. I think that's a very general tip that anyone can take into any card game, like I said before, and I think that's the one thing that probably most players. I think most players are pretty cognizant that it's what they should be doing, yet not necessarily something that everyone does consciously.
Right. It's not something everyone puts into practice either.
Yeah, especially when you're in a tournament match and you're under a timer. I understand, there's only like 5 minutes left on the clock, and we're in an endgame scenario where any wrong move, could cost you. However, you don't want to be accused of slow playing, and obviously you want to finish the game in time. So I've seen some players, they rush into their swings maybe too quickly. They don't don up enough or too little, and that can ultimately, and those are the percentage points that I was mentioning before as far as what increases your tournament equity, right?
Yeah, it's very important to be mindful of the clock, but you don't have to be super fixated on it. Like, definitely make sure you're playing at a reasonable pace, but don't forget to take those like 5 to 10 seconds to be like, this is definitely the right play.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Now for our next tip, number 2 is to, and this is one that I actually resonate with very heavily, is to if you can, try to find stronger players to play test against. And I'll give basically my own story into One Piece TCG. You know, I was basically just starting out. I started playing competitively around, like, let's say I started playing the game around OP1, but like as far as like really trying to take it seriously as for regionals and whatnot, and like trying to get my invite, I would say set 3, set 4.
It was 3 or 4. Yeah.
It was set 4 because Rebecca was out.
Yeah. OP4, right?
Yep.
So, thankfully, you know, I had these other 3 guys at my locals to play test against. You know, they're not really that. Looking back, they weren't really that good at the game, but I mean, they got me to where I need to be. But no, in all seriousness, so like, Trevor,
Okay.
you know, I'm gonna gas you up a little bit. You know, you're known as like one of the strongest Whitebeard players in North America, and you've been around on the YouTube platform, you know, with other channels and whatnot, you know, with podcasts and, you know, deck profiles and whatnot. So,
Yep.
For me personally, at the time, I believe, you know, with set 4, Whitebeard, before he got nerfed or before he was banned, was still considered as the general best deck. And I really wanted to do well and get my invite. And I didn't particularly care about, you know, my playstyle or what colors I played. I just, you know, this was strictly just me wanting to improve at the game and wanting to get a high finish at a tournament. So I hit him up. I was like, hey, Trevor, I know you are a great Whitebeard player. Give me the crash course. You know, teach me the in and outs. I'll give you whatever. I'll give you a prize card if I win it. And yeah, and that was it. He put me through the ringer, just like a week straight of Whitebeard testing, starting from me being baby Whitebeard to making a top 8 at one of my first regionals online. And
That was your first, right?
That was my second.
That was your second? Okay.
Because my first one I brought Katakuri, and then I was like, man, I hate losing to like the triggers in the mirror match. I want to play a
Gotcha.
good deck, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why I chose Whitebeard. And that's when I hit you up, Trevor, and I was like, hey, I just want to play the most consistent deck. I don't want to gamble. I just want to, you know, play as well as I can with the most consistent deck possible, and that's what Trevor was there for. You know, he put me through like probably like 100 mirror matches. If I had to guess.
I've played that week. I specifically played a lot of Whitebeard.
He was like, Colin, the Whitebeard mirror match is like the hardest matchup that you're gonna have to play. Everything else, every other 5K leader is like easy as heck once you figure the mirror match. And he was right. At the time, you know, like literally all we tested was Whitebeard mirror matches. I went in. Thankfully, I only played like 2 mirror matches in that are regional, so I went 1-1 in mirror matches. So my only loss was a mirror match, and then the rest of the event was like a bunch of Katakuris and other 5K leaders that, you know, I did pretty well against. And yeah, and so this circles back to the original point of like, you need, in order to improve, and I think this might be a little bit obvious, but you need to find stronger players to play against. And I think you'll be surprised how many first of all, there are plenty of great players in the community, but out of that population of like solid to great players, you'll be surprised how many are willing to take time out of their day to help you improve and, you know, to teach you a thing or two.
Right, and that was something I was going to talk about, is the community is like very willing to help people improve and like very open to like play testing with people. If you reach out, usually you're not going to be hit with, yeah, I'm not going to help you. The worst you'll get is, hey man, I'm a little busy right now with work or school or wherever, let me finish that and then I got you later. But also it's like the big fish in a small pond type of deal. If you just keep playing against players that are weaker than you, that you don't really learn anything from them, you can't really like absorb knowledge and like improve that way. And when you get put into the big pond, you realize there's always someone better, right?
Absolutely.
To tag onto that, if your local scene is not big, something you can do is just reach out in Discord servers. I know a friend of mine who's from Colorado. He's now in his local scene now because he's played the game enough to feel comfortable to go to locals. But for a while there, he was playing online with only me, and then like he was joining some local servers and just playing on the sim consistently and playing against people like that. And that can be very helpful as well in terms of, it doesn't necessarily have to be locals to test with. It can be someone on Discord that you find or you hit up, or they hit you up and they're just willing to, you know, work with you. And they don't always necessarily have to be stronger. Remember that sometimes it's just okay to find someone that's on par with you and you guys grow together. because that's to piggyback on this a little bit. Me and Arvin specifically, I feel like we went into the game and we had somewhat of the same skill level, and I think me and him have helped each other grow together. A lot of times only facing each other. A lot of my testing in set 2 was against him and another friend of ours, and I feel like that was like the most growth I've ever shown in the game. And that was with players that, again, they're not necessarily stronger than me. I would say at the time that they were, but on equal level. And every time that we tested, we could see the lines that were making. If someone made a mistake, we were able to point that out. And we also took, I won't go too deep into it, but it also doesn't necessarily have to be super, the stronger players. It's just competent players with you that are willing to grow with you at the same time.
I could add on to that. It's just finding players that are willing to discuss and talk to you through games, so that practice games aren't just games. You're practicing for a purpose, as Colin would graciously tell you for testing. Mm-hmm. All his testing has a purpose. When he goes into testing, he wants a result to come out of it, and he looks to achieve something specific. I'll let you explain if you want to explain, Colin.
No, absolutely. That will lead into a later point in our top 8 tips. But you're absolutely right. I would even say it's not just playing against stronger players, like Trevor's saying, but it's also trying to find at least solid players that play different archetypes. Trying to find someone that is a really good pilot for Enel in our current meta. Sakazuki. Even trying to find a really good Zoro player. It doesn't even have to be like the best Zoro player in the country, but just someone that is, like competently good and knows what they're doing, just so you can get a feel for that matchup. And I would even say, rolling back to Muhammad's point earlier about just trying to find and play tournaments too. I know there are plenty of, excuse me, I think that may be Trevor's point with your friend in Colorado, but yep. There is I've seen this with many people at many locals throughout other card games, whether it be like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, where sometimes people might feel, especially newer players, might feel a bit too intimidated to play in a tournament. They think, I only just play with my buddies, I'm just playing like maybe a couple starter decks plus a few extra cards, but I want to improve, I want to get better at the game. But they're too intimidated to play at their locals or even play at like an upper level tournament, maybe like a regional case tournament or an online regionals, etc. Don't be scared. Mm-hmm. Play those tournaments. Like, honestly, you only get better if you play those tournaments, because guess how you're going to meet stronger players is by going to those larger events, right?
Yeah. And there's no shortage of events to participate in as well. So online locals you participate in. There's ranked discords you can be a part of. Just getting those games and meeting those players is enough.
Like, there's a lot of discords where you could just, even a lot of the like big regional discords that they use for the online regionals, you'll find people in there just wanting to play the game because they love the game and they want to improve. And there's a lot of how do I put this? Playing with people helps you to grow more as long as everyone is willing to improve, and that kind of leads into my next point, is finding a group to play with consistently. If you can like get a group going, like similar to how we did, or even like similar to what Trevor and Arvin started off with, just each other, as long as everyone's keeping an open mind and no one's just like blaming everything on variance, you can always find some way to improve, something you did that you could have done better, or some other line that might have potentially resulted in you winning the game versus you losing the game. And having a group to help you see that always leads to improvement.
Yeah, and that perfectly transitioned to between our third and fourth point, which is not only finding a group to play with consistently, but when you do play test, as Arvin was saying, play test with a purpose. Now, what do we mean by that? Playing games is better than not playing. I think we can generally agree on that, right?
Yeah.
However, when it comes to playing with the purpose of improving, we want to be more analytical on our matchups, the way we played the game, even the way certain cards are performing in our deck lists, things like that. That's what I mean by playtesting with a purpose, is trying to analyze and break down the games that you are playing in your playtesting sessions to find some sort of answer or hypothesis as to what is what is good or what is bad in the metagame. And it can even like it doesn't even have to be like an extreme science per se, but it's just what it can even just be like what felt better, what felt worse. As because card games, One Piece is a game of variance, right? A lot of things might be hard to fully articulate just because you're not totally sure if it's maybe because of the way you played or because of variance, but just trying to keep an eye out for that and trying to be cognizant of the decisions that you're making throughout your playtesting.
Right. And there's something that I know we do in our group a lot in regards to playtesting with a purpose, but if there's like something you want to try, like a tech in your deck or something, specifically like take that card and make sure that it's in our opening hand, we'll just put that aside and then draw 4, just so that you're like we said, you playtest to figure out whether or not this thing you wanted to test is worth testing or not, or if it's not worth keeping in. Like if we have it in our deck but we didn't see an entire course of a match and then we won the match, it didn't tell us whether that card was helpful or not. We just won the match anyways, or we lost the match anyways. The card had no impact on it, right?
Yeah, when we're specifically testing for specific cards, it's important to get that data initially, because the deck's going to perform. If it's a good deck, it's going to perform either way, but we've got to figure out if that card impacted the strength of that deck at any point in the match. The best way to do that is just to include it in play.
Yep. Perfect. And I think with that leads us, Trevor, into our 5th point, right?
Yeah. One of the big things that I like to do with our group is we take time to discuss matchups. And as you're discussing the matchups, kind of what you guys were pointing out in terms of the card, or if you're testing with a purpose for that single card, is testing your deck. You're talking about your deck list and your ratios as it goes as you play. Speaking on set 5, our group was really focused, unfortunately, and we really dialed in on, I think improperly we dialed in on only like specifically Sakazuki, Katakuri, and Enel, and we didn't give enough credit to Enel even when we were on our testing, and we did not give enough credit to Purple Luffy. And that's something that I think kind of hurt at least our testing for set 5, and I don't think we'll ever make that mistake again, because we didn't make a mistake like that in the past sets, but realistically One Piece has never been so open in the meta comparatively, because 4 decks in the meta being top tier is really weird for this game, because whenever you think about it, the meta had always been like Whitebeard is BDIF, or it's Whitebeard and Zoro, or it's Whitebeard Law and Zoro, and those are triangle matchups, and it's when you add a 4th deck in there, it does make a difference, in my opinion at least. And that's something that I heavily imply, or I hopefully everyone takes to heart, is like discussing your matchups for the deck that you choose to play for that meta or your upcoming event, because that's something that I think, again, these guys can maybe speak on it. It hurt us when it came to the set 5 meta, is we did not respect 2 decks enough in the meta.
Absolutely.
We didn't get paired into Iceberg. We never paired into it, but we never.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The 5th deck in the meta. I'm so sorry. You're right.
Secret 5th meta. But yeah, I mean, similar to like the playtest thing. Playtest against things you think you're going to see, not things you're not. And like Trevor was saying, we very heavily tunneled. We thought we were only really going to see Sakazuki and Katakuri and maybe Enel, because in our testing we thought Katakuri just mopped the floor with Enel. We thought it wasn't close. We thought that Katakuri was the Barry Yellow deck. It had Big Mom. And our testing kind of showed that, but we tunneled very hard on it. And we similarly very heavily under-tested Purple Luffy. We didn't try some of the choices that were made and some of the choices that did well at Nationals. A lot of the lists were playing Miss All Sunday. We tested the card for 2 games, maybe. It lost going first and lost going second in our 2 to 4 games of testing, and we said this isn't it, and we moved on. And that was like a mistake, but like Trevor said, we're not going to make that mistake again. We've gotten to the point now where it's you discuss your deck list, why you're playing the card, what benefit you get from it, what drawback it gives you. Like Miss All Sunday into Zoro, Purple Luffy's already not doing great into Zoro, adding in another no block doesn't help you, that kind of stuff as an example, but that's like what we're doing now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that's where like the purple Luffys were, because Zoro was becoming popular in the meta again. Purple Luffys started implementing the O Robin or the Wano Robin to pop 3 drops or less and establish a good body on the board. Another thing that we tested really heavily was 10 drop Blue Kaido that drew 4 in Sakazuki. We were heavy on that card at the very beginning. One of you guys who brought the Sakazuki, I ended up bringing Katakuri to nationals, but some of you were on that card, some of you weren't on that card, I believe. Am I correct on that?
Or if you all on it in different rates.
That's what
I had
it was.
one in my list.
But we
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The other thing we tested very heavily, which we probably really didn't need to, was a 10 cost Kuzan, the Sea Rare from set 2.
Yeah.
Because I know that we tested that for ages, saying it was the only way you really consistently beat yellow, and the reality of it was playing differently let you beat yellow most of the time. You didn't really need the 10 drop to do it, and then Blue Kaido, the draw 4 Secret Rare Kaido, just beat an L when he tried to starve you, and that was all you really needed to do, or needed it to do, I should say.
Yeah. But, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say is, and that's even something to think about, is that like realistically, we may not even need the 10 drop Kaido, as EU Nats proved. You know, that card was it good? Was it not good? Did it help everybody? Did it not help everybody? Really, it's that card is still to me one of the like the random, not random, but like a weird card in the set that just like it was either doing really well for somebody or it was doing absolute nothing for a lot of people, and it was just that was a card that I personally couldn't get behind. I loved the 10 drop Kuzan. Understandably, I know why it's bad though. But go ahead, Arvin. Sorry, I didn't mean to rant.
I mean, I'm just gonna blame my personal inexperience in the deck for like choosing certain 10 costs in the Sakazuki lists due to the yellow matchup being difficult if you just play it wrong. I'm gonna admit playing it wrong. You feel like you need the 10 drops to clear everything. Yeah, but you don't have to play the control deck to necessarily clear every body on the board. It's a resource game, and it's something to understand going forward. It was my first time playing a control deck in this game, or in any game. I usually just get faced, but it was definitely a learning experience for me.
And I think that it wasn't originally part of our top 8, but I think maybe a little bonus tip to sneak in here is being able to admit when you're not playing a deck or a certain matchup correctly. I think that is a big... I think that's a big factor for a lot of players, even players that we personally, even myself. I've been guilty of it too, where I'm like,
I think we all have been.
Yeah, where like I'm insistent that it's like I played this game as perfectly as I could have. There's no reason for me to be playing this 10 drop Kaido, or there's no reason for me to be playing this 10 drop Kuzan. And then I watch another strong player like Arvin or whoever else play the Sakazuki deck, and I'm like, oh, that's, or even on Sim. Like, I know we don't respect a lot of Sim players, or at least in the competitive community, but even then, there are still plenty of strong players on the Sim. And I queue into them, and I see the way they play the dragon, and I'm like, oh, that's how you draw 4 cards. You just, like, don't die. You stay at 2 life, and then you draw 4 cards, and then you win. Like, but yeah, it's just things like that. I think people need to be willing to, admit when they're doing something perhaps incorrectly or suboptimally.
All right, and that was an excellent point. I think we can, like, another great point that I think Arvin can probably introduce is just, like, overall just taking breaks a bit while you're testing. Right, Arvin?
I agree. I don't know how often or how many people remember being students and studying for tests or whatever. But the One Piece card game is a little similar in that you're gathering information for yourself when you test, and obviously you're doing it for a purpose. But if you do too much testing all at once in a huge burst, you're not going to remember every single game during that session, and you're not going to remember every piece of information or breakthrough you had if you do it all in one long burst. It's important to take breaks, is so that you have time to think about these plays or just integrate it into your own gameplay for your following testing. If you don't, you risk losing the time you put into the entire day.
Right, I 100% agree. And it's another, like, little spin-off from that is, like, a lot of the time it's said that you should be proactive about doing work for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. After every single game, you should like take 5 minutes to reflect on what you did, what you could have done, what led you to win, what led you to lose, just so that you can absorb like, these are the choices I made that were very important in me winning or losing this match.
To put into this is, or to talk about it a little bit too, is all of this stuff takes time to get used to and do. It's because I'm new to card games a lot. You know, Colin and Mohammed are very experienced in TCGs, so I think that's also really cool. Is they get to bring their experience to other TCGs to this one, while maybe me and Arvin are very fresh and have like new eyes when it comes to a TCG and how we play the game and stuff like that. Because personally, what I love to do whenever we're playtesting is one person on each end pilot a deck, and then a second person sit behind them or with them to help them out and come up with ideas together. Because I think what that does is it when you're talking to somebody about your plays consistently, both of you are thinking, and both of you are thinking out loud, and you're remembering your plays. When you're sitting there and you're talking to somebody consistently about every play that you're making, or looking at your hand every time against the board state that you're looking at, it definitely makes your mind have to, you know, readjust and think and make sure you're remembering these things going forward in future plays as well. Because at least One Piece, a lot of these situations that you're going to come across matchup based come up a lot, you know, because every deck plays to its strengths, and it's usually just like the similar lines of play. There are some wacky stuff sometimes, but realistically it's all the same thing. Yellow is probably the most inconsistent when it comes to that because of triggers, but again, we're playing against yellow, you should expect a trigger or two. But yeah, that's something to think about as well. Is don't be afraid to work on this stuff, and don't expect it to just click immediately either. It takes time.
And on Trevor's point, it just like loops back to what we were saying earlier with find a group that you're able to test with. Like when we got into our testing groove and we're doing the like 2v2 through one guy, we were like seeing significantly more lines than had we just like tested on our own. I know when Colin and Trevor were playing Katakuri into me and Arvin playing Sakazuki, I saw a completely different answer to their board than Arvin did, and both of them were valid. It's just ultimately which one was more efficient, and that was the question that we were trying to answer through the playtesting that we were doing. And it's very important to just focus on that.
It's important to, you know, discuss with your teammate if you guys are doing the 2v2, just like explain your thought processes on a play, explain why it's a good play, and you have your partner explain why their play is a good play, and maybe through explaining your own play, you kind of understand the deeper math behind the play, and you eventually get to whatever is most efficient for the turn or for the game, even.
Awesome.
Sorry, real quick before we move past it. Another thing in that type of testing, even if you're doing one-on-one and you know the player that you're playing against is competent on the deck that they're playing, don't be afraid to ask questions like, what are you afraid of in this situation? What do you not want to see in this situation? What would you want to see in this situation that you're okay with? Because that's something that we think about as like, whenever you're playing Sakazuki, and how you think about answering a board to how the opponent thinks you're going to answer the board are two completely different things. And I learned that really and you know, I learned that through Arvin. Was like, I would say something in my head or out loud, I would say how I would like clear the board in my head, like if he had it, and he's like, that's just ineffective. He's right. It was what I thought was right was wrong entirely for the most part, because his hand doesn't allow him to do that, or the situation doesn't allow to do that for the future two turns. And that's something that needs to be put out there as well, is you don't always know best. Sometimes your opponent knows best, funny enough, or your opponent doesn't know best. You know, like talk to your opponent as well, again, in the testing format that you're working on or you're in.
Absolutely.
Yep. Awesome.
We kind of swapped around a bit there.
Yeah.
But, as we were discussing, just try to be open to more plays, because if you just get into your own play pattern, you're not gonna learn and grow as a player. It's important to attempt to branch out, even if you know it will lose you the game, or if you think it's gonna lose you the game. It's important to try new things, because repetition is good for efficiency, or for, getting combos in. But if we are afraid to branch paths when playing decks, then when it's on something we haven't seen before, we're going to take a lot more time, and that introduces a lot more mistakes than if we had tried that in testing.
Right.
I would like to raise a slightly controversial point, if you all would allow me to maybe sink our channel to the ground on the first video.
Sure.
Look, man,
We haven't even started it yet. Sure.
I think none of our takes are hot with our viewers. Go for it.
This might to some players this might be a hot take, but I believe in order to, and again, every player in the One Piece community should be able to enjoy the game however they please, right? Everyone should be able to play whatever deck they want, whatever general strategy or archetype they would like to play. If that's what they have fun doing, more power to you. I cannot take that away from you, right? The purpose of this podcast or the purpose of this specific episode, I should say, is targeted towards those who want to increase their win percentages and increase their chances of doing well in top tier tournaments, right? Now, my point is that I have seen a lot of players, and this comes from other card games too, whether it be like Magic, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh. I am a blue player. I am a red player. I am a yellow player. I hear that so often, and I think that is a statement that for a lot of players limits your ability to improve. And I think it is directly antithetical to Arvin's point of trying to be open-minded to new styles of play. Now, everyone can have their own preferences. I like playing blue. I like playing black. I really like the Sakazuki playstyle, but I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. And I know plenty of people that really like playing red, and that's not to say that red is a bad color or anything. Obviously, for basically all of One Piece's history, it's a great color. But then there's players that perhaps play green, for example. Green has not been one of the better colors historically, and people identify as, I am a green player, and will just only play green decks and will refuse to play anything else. I think if you want to increase your tournament equity and your percentage chance of winning or performing better in tournaments, I think players like that need to perhaps get out of the mindset, right? I'm not saying to not play your pet color, but what I am saying is to try playing other colors. Try playing a red deck. Try playing a blue deck. Try to get a perspective from other archetypes, because at the end of the day, that's how you learn your matchups as well, right? Like,
Exactly.
if I'm a Sakazuki player and I'm trying to learn the Enel matchup, heck, I'll go on Sim and pick up the Enel deck and try it out. I need to see like what life is like from the Enel player's perspective, right?
Right, and it's similar to what Trevor was talking about earlier. When we were playtesting and we were asking our playtest partner, hey, what is the board you don't want to see me answer your board with? The best way to get the answer to that is to play the deck that you are playing against and figure out what you don't want to see from the deck you want to play. Like, I kind of agree with Colin here, where I'm not telling people not to play the deck they like or the color they like. If you want to play green, if you want to be a Eustace Captain Kidd only player, more power to you, but the best way to improve your Eustace Captain Kidd win rate is to play the other decks you're going to play against and learn how your deck can do well into them. Like, what can your deck do into these decks that they don't want to see or that they'll struggle into? And that's a great point, like similar to what Arvin was saying. If you try new play styles, even if you don't like them, you'll still learn from them.
Everything in testing. Go ahead.
That was two factor of what I was doing, or I was talking about, is Arvin's right. Winning is not everything when you're testing. You should actually be losing more when you're testing. And I know it sounds weird to say out loud, but like, if you're losing, there means something's wrong and you can improve. That's the best thing that you can do. If you are only winning in your playtesting, that means either A, the playtesting partner that you're playing against is not doing as best as their best, or you guys something's not clicking. I guess that's the simplest way to say it. Something is not clicking if only one person is winning in that playtesting. And like for 5 games of your playtesting session, if one person's winning, talk about it, see what you guys could have done differently on the loser side of things, the guy who was losing side of things, and if over those next few games if it's fixed, that's good. That means you identified the problem, you solved it, and you can keep moving forward and work on it. And then maybe that guy starts losing, and then now you got to solve that problem, and that's a good thing. That's what you want when you're playtesting. Another thing is this is going off my personal experience with this discussion. I was a Whitebeard player, I was a Zoro player, I was a heavy red player. I love red, and I used to love blue back in set 1. Going from set 4 to set 5 was a very big change for me. I don't enjoy set 5, and I still don't enjoy set 5. I think a lot of the decks are just not my cup of tea, but I have to be okay with. I have to just admit that they're not my cup of tea and just play the deck that should have been what I should have played at Nats was either Sakazuki or Enel. I landed on Katakuri because I didn't want to think. I was done with the set, you know. And that's just. I would recommend never doing that to yourself. Don't shoot yourself in the foot because you're just tired of something. I ruined my Nats experience in a way because I tried to just compromise on something that just wasn't. It wasn't the best in the moment. Exactly. Don't compromise if you don't have to. Work on playing the best deck. If I would have taken the time to play Sakazuki from the very beginning, I think, I wouldn't be struggling now to play Sakazuki, because that's what I'm doing right now. Unfortunately, I am learning how to play Sakazuki. Not that I don't know how to play it, but there are micro decisions in that deck that when you pilot it are different than how you play against it. I knew how to play against it as Katakuri. I don't know how to play it again. I don't know how to play as the Sakazuki player into the Katakuri matchup, which is hilarious, by the way. But that's a rough time for me because it's all new. That when you start changing sides and you go on the other side, it's a little bit different. So take a lesson from me. Please branch out. Do not be content on trying to force something that isn't working, because that's what we should have realized as a playtesting group. And it's on me too, because I'm the one playing the deck. I should have realized Katakuri was not the pick. I just didn't want to change. I was content.
I mean, you'll never know too. As sets come out, you never know. Maybe down the line there will, maybe you say right now that you don't like the color purple. Maybe in 2 sets you'll find the purple deck, whichever leader that may be, for like set 8.
Iceberg.
Yeah, but for real, maybe Iceberg gets the boost, and then like you pick up the deck for a few games and you're like, man, this deck is sweet. I never thought I'd be a purple player, but this deck's pretty cool. No pun intended.
But it's like a similar point to what Trevor was saying. This is like a small side tip, actually, is not everyone is always going to be like the same skill level with the same leader. And he was like saying now he has to learn Sakazuki. He's not as good at the deck. We all 4 of us even can say, like, I'm nowhere near as good. Not nowhere near as good, but I'm not as good at the deck as, say, Colin or Arvind is. And similarly, not to toot.
No, I'm certainly not as good as Jackson Huang.
Jackson Huang, second place nationals. Right.
Look, but I can top 64 with Sokka. I don't know about top 2 like Jackson did. Man, that finals game was crazy.
Yeah. But it's like there's always you need to be in that mentality where there's always someone playing your deck probably better than you. Until you've won nationals, I don't think you can get away with saying you're the best whatever deck player. Right.
But even then when you are on a high, I'm gonna tangent real quick, I'm sorry. When you're on a high and you're going for and you're winning a lot and stuff like that, don't be afraid to get humbled, because you're gonna get humbled.
Oh yeah.
Nationals was a humbling experience for me because I'm a year into card games, and my year has been very good. I know that. I understand that. So when you lose it's like, oh shit, that's what that feeling feels like, and I hate it. So that's what my drive is now. I was going to take a break after Nationals, but now I have a drive to just keep playing and get better because I got pissed at myself, and I don't want it to happen again, I'm a very competitive player. I don't have TCG background, but I have, unfortunately, it's like League of Legends, it's Pokemon VGC and stuff like that. I can be competitive, and I want to be competitive, and I just didn't prove myself at Nationals, and I'm going to try this year for sure.
There's videos coming up online, in person. We have a few events we're planning on going to. See you guys there. But we've already started the set 6 grind, right? We have deck lists in mind, we have testing planned, we have a few like even like some choices we've already like seen in decks that we need to like figure out if we don't like. It hasn't stopped, right? That's another great point, is testing should be perpetual. Improvement isn't something that you can like sit on your laurels, right? Even like a great quote, I can't remember who said it, but if something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Even if you're not testing every single day, every single night, get some testing in every couple days at least. Like, make sure that you still have the drive, that you're seeing your options, so that you can perpetually improve, because the small incremental improvements are what lead to major improvements and ultimately seeing those top finalist results.
But to kind of leave into Arvin's point, if you don't mind me usurping your point a little bit, but test with breaks too. Don't forget about breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't burn yourself out. That's not a good thing.
I was about to get into that. It's good to refresh yourself on testing, but if you're not testing for any particular tournament in general, but you still consider yourself a competitive player, it is okay to take, like, you can call it a break, but just keep current, but don't burn yourself out if you don't need to. Or even just don't burn yourself out before a tournament. It's important to just take a couple days before a big tournament if you feel like if you've completely tested everything and you're comfortable with all your matchups and all you need to know, then don't stress about it.
Yep.
Yeah, to piggyback off Arvin, since we stayed in different hotels / Airbnbs for nationals, I don't know what you guys did, but my pre-nationals was I slept. I made sure I was rested. I didn't do any testing that night because we did all our testing in advance, right? That was my line of thought. But I'm sure you guys... I think
Trevor, would you like to share what we did pre-national?
Hey, we all had a good time. That's the best part that I can tell you.
Absolutely, nationals was blessed.
It was, but the night before, I was so undecided on how to play the game anymore. I was just like, fuck it, let's test Zoro for like an hour. Couldn't beat the Sokka matchup. Dude was just drawing nuts. Arvin can admit it. He was drawing Rob Lucci after Rob Lucci, and he won't tell you, but he was.
I went 7-0.
And I was asleep. I literally was asleep for 4 of those games. The deck could not...
We had 4 different pilots on the deck. We could not figure out how to beat Sakazuki and Zoro somehow.
Which is funny because a few nights before at our locals, before we flew out to Cali, I didn't have any issues against Sakazuki. That was the funniest part about it. But anyways, the tangent is I ended up at like 11:30 at night. I said, "Hey Colin, build me a Kata Curry list. I'm gonna play it at Nationals tomorrow."
It was good deck. It was good deck.
It's good list. It's good list.
It was good deck.
Took his 2-round buy, started off 2-2.
I literally went into full Borat, like, building that list. I was like, it's good deck. This plays triggers.
Yeah, and
this has like has 4 of like every like BS trigger that I never want to see across the table.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And funny enough, I did okay. I mean, I went 7-3, and the only reason I think I lost my final round was because of the 10th round repair. And then the 11th, we just didn't play an 11th round. that was a good
There
thing.
were potentially 2 more rounds. There were 3 undefeateds left.
That whole Nash US
that could be a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, that could be a whole separate podcast episode in itself.
I'm gonna harken back to real quick just to clear up our final little point here, and it was something that I wanted to bring up because I did talk about it a little bit, but it's when you're playing in a meta, you find the deck that you're comfortable on. It doesn't have to be what's labeled as the best deck, and Nell wasn't labeled as the best deck coming into nationals. It was labeled as one of the best decks, but Sakazuki was kind of BDIF in the room for a lot of people. And an L1 Nats. So something that you're comfortable on. Jonas found his comfortable deck. A couple of guys out there in the Orlando scene that I talked to a lot during nationals. A good friend of mine, or a good player on Whitebeard, Brandon Corpus. I will name drop him because he's gotten a few Nats tops with Whitebeard. He stuck to Whitebeard. I think the repairs and stuff like that got to him personally. I won't speak too much on that, but he stuck with Whitebeard. He stuck to the deck that he's comfortable on. A few other guys out there chose a Nell, and then some of them chose Sakazuki, and that's just something that they were comfortable on. And one of them walked up to me and said, "Did you pick Whitebeard?" I said, "Unfortunately, no." He's like, "Fuck me either." That's kind of like our consensus walking to nationals. Two of us agree that we just should have brought Whitebeard and have a good time.
I mean, even if you look at like the other regions nationals, right? I believe Oceania nationals and LATAM nationals were both won by P. Luffy.
Yep.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
just like there were a number of decks that you could choose in regards to what's a good deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could have done well with it. It
Yeah.
just takes knowing the matchups and
Yep.
ultimately playing it well.
Yeah, and that's just it. Practice what you're comfortable on, or what you find to be comfortable on, and don't be afraid of that pick. I'm sad I didn't pick P. Luffy because that looks like I know that P. Luffy's a deck that I like to play because it's a raw beat stick deck, but it's just a deck that for me feels inconsistent whenever you look at it. I have been proven wrong recently.
You're welcome.
Thanks. But
For context, yesterday Trevor and I tested the P. Luffy versus Sakazuki. I was playing the Oceania winning P. Luffy list, and I like 5 or 6 0'd him convincingly.
And it wasn't like, and I'm playing across the guy who top 64. Yeah, no, it was not. I like top. The guy that I'm sitting across was top 64ing on Sakazuki. He's like, dude, I don't know what else you could have done. Like, there was realistically nothing I could have done. He was like, it was like ulti into page 1, into the Nico or Miss All Sunday, into like, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
It was like ulti combo into Poly, into Kaido, into Poly again, into like 2 5-drops. It was like disgusting.
Yeah.
Again,
it's the
yeah.
openers you don't beat, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, like, that's not to say that like Purple Luffy's necessarily the best deck. I mean, I'm sure there's some inconsistencies, and it was just funny the fact that I happened to like draw super hot to like 5-0 Trevor into outer space. But but going back to his original point is like, finding the deck you're most comfortable with. If you really enjoy Purple Luffy, it's a good deck in the metagame. Go ahead and play it. Just obviously make sure you practice, right? I think that's the cardinal point that we're trying to get across from this entire podcast episode. But as long as you try to find a deck that is good in the metagame. I'm not saying you can win with anything. I'm not Iceberg. I'm sorry, Iceberg players. I'm
right
beating
now.
up on you a little bit. Yeah, right now. But like Iceberg as it is right now, probably not the best pick percentage wise, right? But something like, if you don't like Sakazuki, which is considered the best deck at the moment, if you really love playing Katakuri, practice your matchups, bring it to your tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Purple Luffy, Enel, Zoro, even. Zoro can surprisingly beat Enel sometimes. It's hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard, but it is doable. I've seen it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them are running the Whitebeards just to be able to help that matchup. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of Colin a little bit here, it's important to notice when a meta shifts, especially between sets, right? Like, if you like playing the control style decks from before and you were playing Rebecca in set 4 and we get to set 5 and Sakazuki comes out, it's important to note that Sakazuki is probably the better blue-black control deck than Rebecca was, or is even. And making that shift, while you might not necessarily like it, it's like they still play similarly, and they're both, or Sakazuki is definitely the stronger deck of the two. So it's like those types of deals. And even in set 6, Sakazuki is likely to still be a very strong control deck, but we see all these new leaders coming out that still have potential, and now you have to adjust to those, right? P. Luffy might not be as strong in set 6. We don't know. We haven't tested it. I can't speak to that. But things like that, it's always important to keep an open mind in regards to what is a viable deck and what might not be as viable.
I think that pretty much wraps up our main top 8 tips. So just to move on to maybe a couple of extra honorable mention tips that we might have sort of hearkened to in our previous discussions, is that I think an additional tip, a bonus tip, might be to be patient with yourself. It doesn't take it doesn't take 1 hour to learn a matchup, right? It doesn't take a single day to learn a matchup. Going back to my story with learning Whitebeard from Trevor, it took me multiple days just to figure out that, oh, I can take hits as the Whitebeard player, right? So be patient with yourself in the sense that maybe you just picked up a deck, maybe you just picked up Enel, and you're not understanding why you keep losing to like a Zoro deck, for example. Maybe I'm using a bit of an extreme example, but it takes time. Sleep on it, watch some gameplay, and that's where the previous tips come in, right? Discussing with your trusted friends and or testing partners what you could be doing better.
I have a small tip bouncing off of Colin is watching gameplay. I think playing the game isn't the only way you can absorb knowledge, right? Not to say that every game you watch is going to be a game that is going to help you improve. There's definitely a lot of content out there, and not all of it is fantastic gameplay, top level. You're not going to see every game as a nationals finals level game, but even if you watch a game and there are mistakes or misplays in it, you can always learn from that. You can say, hey, that guy swung 5 here, but at the end of his turn he had 2 open dawn and no rad beam or whatever spell that he could have used on his opponent's turn. He could have swung 7 instead, right? And that would have gotten more cards or confirmed to life. And those are always like games, even though they're not the greatest to watch, even if you think like, yeah, that guy should have 100% won instead of losing, you can still like gain information from that because you see where the mistakes happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also with that too, it's having to try to take your own ego out of it too. I know after maybe like a rough testing session, we can be like a bit salty at ourselves or at our testing partners or just at like the game in general. It's like, oh man, this, I hate this category match. My opponent keeps drawing 10-drop mom over and over again. He put 3 bedges in his bottom 3 life, which that actually happened in real life.
I was like, dude, are you calling me out right now?
I was.
Man
Look,
shows me his life. He's like, it's 3 of the same card. I'm like,
yeah.
Playing Full House right here.
Look, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that game got me pretty tilted. But I think accounting, it's okay to get tilted every now and then. It's natural, but it's just being able to account for it and just being able to circumvent it into a learning experience thereafter. And again, being patient with yourself and also just trying to take your own ego out of it. Understand that everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. Maybe you didn't play the matchup the best, or maybe there were specific cards that we should or should not be playing in our list. Things like that. Testing is a process.
Katakuri.
Yeah.
That's a little shots fired right there.
These are all targeted at me. I don't like this.
That's a funny little joke.
Yeah, it's a joke. That's what it is. It's a joke.
It's always a joke.
Just a joke.
Yeah, just a joke. It doesn't fucking hurt when I go to bed at night. You're right, guys.
Look, there may have been someone currently on this podcast who in testing said the Secret Rare Katakuri is the worst card in the Katakuri deck. I'm not playing
it. Is.
And his testing showed it wasn't.
It is.
Played it at Nats via one Colin Wong deck list. He's like, this has been the best card I've played all day.
That was a fluke. Just like Nats.
How many times was it a fluke again?
3 times.
Trevor, how much is Secret Rare 8-drop category at the moment?
It's an L. It's only off an L. That price is based off an L. You can't gaslight me. You can't. You can't. I don't play 4 of that card in my deck. That's all I'm gonna say. That price is because of an L. You're not gaslighting me on this one, buddy. I'll die on this hill. But either way, guys. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, any other closing, additional honorable mention tips or any other closing remarks, guys, before we make our shout outs?
No. I think everything was covered. We covered a lot, which I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
But yeah, so obviously just to wrap this up, there's plenty of other I would imagine maybe even hundreds of other tips that could have been compiled into like the encyclopedia of how to become a better card game player, right? And we'd probably be still podcasting for hours and hours. But in the comments below, if you guys have any other additional tips that you would like to discuss, feel free to put them down below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the content.
Oh god, we're becoming actual content creators. I forgot.
If you want to see a 12-hour podcast recording of us discussing other tips, be sure to leave a comment down below saying which of us four you want to host that one.
Yeah, we have plenty of other, like, competitive / One Piece improvement ideas as well, with maybe specific gameplay tips, such as, the concept of playing to win versus playing not to lose. That's actually a big thing in multiple card games beyond One Piece that we could probably make probably a whole separate episode about. Metagaming, the deck that you should be playing, things like that. I think, we can definitely discuss down the line. But yeah, so a couple of shout outs. The first shout out that I would like to make is to our guy Omar, who is making our awesome logos for both the channel and hopefully for the podcast introduction screen that you saw at the very beginning. So links to his social media, if he has a page. I'm not totally sure. I'm so sorry, Omar. But if you do have a page, links down below to shout out his artworks and stuff.
Real quick,
my personal shout outs. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Real quick before we move on, I would like to put, if you guys would like to see any other type of content like gameplay discussion videos, maybe even deck lists or something like that, or ideas that we're cooking up for the meta, let us know in the comments as well.
Absolutely.
Go ahead,
I just want to shout out these three guys for being awesome testing partners and coming out here, and I also want to shout out you guys for coming and watching this podcast. If you stayed to the end, prove it to me by telling me who you think has the biggest forehead on the screen right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out. Welcome to the Sun Pirates TCG channel. This has been episode 1 of It Connects.
Awesome. Thank you guys. See you next time.
See you guys.